to the AI Talk Show, where we discuss the news, share insights, bring guests from the industry, take questions, and involve you in the conversation. AI is having an impact on our businesses, our lives, our society, and everything around us. As leaders in the industry, it's our responsibility to jump in, be a part of the discussion. So let's start the conversation. I'm your host, Asha Saxena, CEO of Women Leaders in Data and AI. In today's episode, we will discuss AI in healthcare. I'm personally very excited about artificial intelligence, especially in healthcare, because there's so much good that we can do. And we always say healthcare is ripe for disruption already. I read this news recently called Hero, which is an entrepreneurial venture, and they're launching the monitor speech pattern of the patients and symptoms to issue alerts prior to the heart failure. Really interesting that on voice signature technology with advanced artificial intelligence, they can detect and predict hospitalization risk. Hero launched this monitor speech patterns of patients and symptoms to issue alerts prior to heart failure. Think about the voice signature technology with advanced artificial intelligence that can detect and predict hospitalization risk, especially for the heart failures, before it actually happens. So what they say is that by speaking 5 standard sentences into a smartphone, the voice goes to a secured cloud-based platform, and the information is analyzed and presented to the clinician, and they can predict if the patient may or may not have heart failure. There are many, many stories like that talks about how AI can really make healthcare personalized and can also help prevent and really make prevention more the way of life. So to discuss artificial intelligence and especially artificial intelligence in healthcare, I have my favorite guest, Besa Bauta. She's been on this show before, and with huge demand, people really loved our conversation. So I had to bring her back. Besa, always nice to have you on this show. I love talking to you. And last conversation was all about deepfake, or how we can create synthetic media for the actually use of businesses, even though there are lots of issues. But today I really want to talk to you about healthcare. You've spent close to 30 years in technology field, where you've been the chief data officer for federal, state, healthcare, but specifically around healthcare. I would love to get your opinion about what are your thoughts around AI in healthcare?
So I think AI is definitely a disruptive technology in the healthcare field. I think, as you mentioned, is definitely an opportunity to not only optimize processes, bring greater ROI to patients, improve interoperability. And I'm hoping that with new artificial intelligence technologies, that it's going to help us also in the confidentiality and privacy arena. Obviously, that's much more nascent, but I see a lot of these technologies currently being deployed in detection of cancer, especially with breast image, MRI scans and X-rays, that the algorithm is able to pick up and detect, potential tissues or cells that might be cancerous and provide intervention at a very early stage. There's other research that has been done using electronic health records and mass, looking at the data, especially patient data, and data mining that information to kind of surface what are the critical issues for that patient and client. And therefore, you could optimize treatment in a way that improves not only their health and well-being, but also the longevity of that patient.
When we talk about data in healthcare, listen, the power of data has been huge in healthcare, even before generative AI or the ChatGPT era. Everything is before ChatGPT now and after ChatGPT. But before ChatGPT, this was not new. Healthcare has been working on consolidating data for the good use of patient healthcare outcome, prevention. And we've been seeing health system in using data for predicting and analyzing patient quality metrics. But now things have changed a little bit more. During the pandemic era, we saw the use of telehealth, which became really popular. And people are now becoming more comfortable with telehealth. We've seen, as you said, the genetic understanding of your diseases or your heritage, with 23andMe. people became more conscious about what kind of genetic design we have in our bodies and how can we create prevention towards any of the diseases. And then we had surgical robots, right? We can do surgeries with robots. So between machines, smart devices, Internet of Things, and now AI, I think we are now entering a new era of what healthcare really truly can do for their patient population. Listen, Watson, when IBM launched Watson for healthcare, Watson was getting involved in analyzing the data, but it didn't become really successful as people predicted. What are your thoughts on how it will change now?
I mean, I think you're right, sort of. I think we're at the genesis of new AI in healthcare. We're transforming healthcare and medicine using artificial intelligence applications. I see these technologies used across the board in many things, supporting clinical decisions of physicians. As you said, robotic assisted surgery, medical imaging analysis, remote monitoring and wearables. So you have technologies, or applications using IoT where you could use those sensor technologies and link it with AI to come up with preventative measures. And this helps us have much more what I call, what the field calls personalized medicine. So medicine that's tailored to you, to your needs. And you kind of raised the 23andMe. And in that scenario is that all of us are unique in our own way. We each have, fingerprints that are unique to us. Even though we could have shared history and shared common and shared ancestry, we're all unique individuals. So our conditions are unique to us, and that has to do with our genetics, interplaying with our environment, interplaying with our social economic, where we are at positionality. So all of that actually impacts our health and well-being. And I think our medicine has been pretty much cookie cutter, kind of providing, the same treatment to anyone that has, a COPD or a congestive heart failure. But having these technologies, it actually tailors it to the individual. So not only are we getting more personalized treatment and medicine, but we're also getting medicine that hopefully is much more effective in addressing our underlying conditions or our outward conditions.
Yeah, I have to tell you that I just got I was talking to a friend of mine and I said, how do you look so healthy? And she said, you know what? I actually do preventive care. And I said, tell me more. And so I actually got a whole panel of, tests I need to do to understand my hormones and my genetics so that the physician can look at how can they supplement, either some kind of vitamins or, just keeping me healthy. And I think as you age, it becomes really important that you're staying healthy and you're active and you're mobile, but really truly having a personalized care where it's not generic, like everybody should take vitamins, but it's not, just generic treatment, but you can actually have a personalized treatment to stay healthy and stay healthy, happy life instead of just staying long, living long. And I realized that this kind of medicine now is called longevity medicine instead of just aging, so I think that's really cool that people are getting more and more conscious about staying healthy. And I think the trend started because now you have health on your Apple Watch. You have these devices that can track your heartbeat or your blood pressure or your sugar levels. My mom is diabetic, but to be able to monitor your sugar level on your iPhone, I think is incredible. So think about the amount of data that we're collecting, and we can train these models on these data to be able to give you those personalized care. So I'm excited about the future of personalized care, which I think healthcare really, really needs to evolve into.
I think another thing that you raised is that there is much more testing abilities. The population is much more educated. I think we're all very aware. So some of these technologies, like you said, the Apple Watch, are making us much more aware of our, not only our heart rate, but our steps, our blood glucose levels if you're a diabetic. So all of those things, I think it's sort of a good storm, like a perfect storm where you have the technologies that are maturing pretty quickly. The consumer, or all of us, are advocating for ourselves, and we're looking at our longevity. And I love that term because health and well-being. And I hate the term aging. It makes me, think of like I'm getting old, but sometimes you get better, like a Swiss cheese or is it,
Right.
like a fine wine. But I like the whole concept of longevity. But another thing that has matured, like with 23andMe, but diagnostics. So all of these tools are available to the consumer. And I guess the next overlay for this is that now that these tools are available and across a large population, this information can now be used to train models to provide that personalized medicine that improves our health well-being, but also our longevity as well.
I agree. Another thing which I think everybody's talking about now is how can we use generative AI in any business they're talking about. And so when you talk about healthcare, the generative AI or the large language models, I like the fact that doctors can have conversation with the large language model and understand the patient data, or a pharmacy can look at, have a conversation with large language model and really understand what kind of, drugs this per patient has been using and been effective, or even drug development. What use cases have you seen which could be a positive use case for healthcare in generative AI? Listen, we've had analytical AI, prescriptive AI, but really the craze of generative AI and the use of generative AI among the functional users now is a lot more than ever before. Like, remember those days when we were doing analytical AI and people are still not understanding and not adopting? But now with generative AI, when you can have a natural language processing or happening, or you can actually have a conversation, things are changing very, very fast.
I agree with you, but also I'm like very cautious, especially with very regulated industries like healthcare, is that the margin for error is non-existent. It's like zero. So we have to be very careful of how do we implement these technologies. I always like to have technology coupled with clinical decision making of individuals that have the expertise, that were trained, and having more than one mind in a room. I always like think of like crowdsourcing or groupthink in a lot of ways, that it invalidates any sort of erroneous individual decision making and isolates not only the institution but also the clinician making the wrong decision. Because what a lot of these models can be applied in healthcare is that it can look at the history of the patient, it can pull in the IoT data, it can pull in the genetic data, it can pull all of these different signals and give a really good overview of the person in their environment at any point in time. What are their current state? What would be the preventative conditions that can be applied? And what are the interventions, either primary, secondary, tertiary, that need to be applied? So it's a really great tool for clinicians, but it doesn't negate their clinical decision making. It should augment their clinical decision making. So the way I see these tools embedded in healthcare, obviously with healthcare data, you have to worry about privacy, you have to worry about regulation. As I mentioned, is a very heavily regulated industry. So you want to ensure that these tools are enabled within the environment is receiving their continuity of care. And I'm all about these tools and these applications can go from one hospital system to another hospital system, so you don't have fragmented care, and that's sort of our current environment. So there's opportunity for that. I could see how these insights can be transferred from one hospital to another hospital so that you have the continuity of care. So you don't have any version of me. So if I go to one hospital, they take, they do all of those tests. I go to another hospital, they do all of those tests. Wouldn't it be nice to have this type of some information kind of flow? So then my patient profile follows me wherever I am, and doesn't matter where I am in the world, I receive that continuity of care and the optimal care. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for that. And there's a lot of opportunities to kind of, as we talked about precision medicine, fine tune the intervention with generative AI, because what it really does well is that surmise great volumes of data in a way that makes it really digestible for the clinicians to say, okay, what is my next best action for my treatment for this patient?
And I agree with you completely. I think the regulation and privacy is number one. Even as a patient myself, I would want my data to be secured. Don't they say that the healthcare data sells in the black market the highest value? So of course, everybody's hunting for that healthcare data set. And I think that's really important, that how we are training the data model, and because there's no room for error. I mean, this is your play, we're working with the lives of people. So AI is really truly the companion for the or a resource, one of the resources for the physician to look into or depend on. But what you bring a really interesting topic of regulation, and I think about the regulation and the technologies that can really create some kind of guardrail around regulation, Web3 and blockchain. Have you seen healthcare using blockchain, and do you see any opportunity for creating privacy using blockchain?
I think it's not as widespread. I think healthcare is, these are old-time institutions. They're pretty big. They don't move as at the same pace as other industries, like maybe, insurance or a financial industry, or I mean, at the forefront is usually the technology companies. And a lot that has to do with the regulatory environment that these institutions operate in. It's heavily regulated, and that can be a barrier in adopting a lot of these latest technologies like NFT, NST, blockchain, all of these new technologies. So I really haven't seen en masse adoption. We have use cases and pilot testing across the board. Is trying to figure out how do we do this in a way that makes sense within each of these ecosystems. So we see some innovation in different types of centers or medical centers of excellence, where they're using blockchain to secure patient data, or especially, patient data that gets transferred in interoperability cases from hospital to hospital. But a lot of these large scale, projects, I really haven't seen. I'm sure they're out there. I'm not aware of, sort of kind of taking over the industry en masse. Same thing with a lot of the generative AI. People are cautious. How do we apply this in our ecosystem? How do we get value of this? How do we productionize a lot of this? So there's a lot of excitement. It's just really figuring out how do you operationalize and implement these technologies for the enterprise in order for them to have really great value for what they're trying to do, is actually provide optimal care to their patients.
Besa, I'm excited about healthcare because there's so much opportunities. I think when we think about, I mean, you and I have been in technology for close to 30 years, and I remember coding and building applications where they would get on the shelf, and you get frustrated that you created all this, you spend all this time of your team, and this technology is not being used effectively. And now I feel that with having generative AI right in your face, everybody's engaged with it at some level already. Even if it's not at work, you're using it personally. So you're engaging with AI in a very new way. I mean, we've engaged with AI many ways, from recommendation engine from Netflix or Amazon to Alexa or Siri talking to you. But now we are really engaging with AI in a very new way. And everybody's curious, inquisitive, cautious, and excited about the future of AI. And everyone is talking about it. I think if we keep thinking about the regulation, keep thinking about being responsible and ethical, and keep thinking about advancing and moving forward. I mean, we can't be scared of technology. How do we involve technology in our life cautiously, but responsibly, and also start creating use cases that are effective? We are at the stage where humans and machines are going to coexist. We can't run away from it. So really, as educated consumer, how can we truly engage with AI?
I agree with you.
Right?
100%.
We just have to make sure that we continue creating use cases that are effective. We're coming to the end of the show. I want to thank everyone for joining us today again. We look forward for bringing you more thought-provoking discussion. We want to talk about cutting-edge news and expert insight in our next episode. If you have any questions, comments, please engage. Please ask questions. Connect with us on LinkedIn and start a conversation. We air weekly on Thursdays, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm your host, Asha Saxena. And Besa, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. This is AI Talk Show, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.